All right, so let's see this question now. So in this particular question, we are given a sales table and a product table. Now in the sales table, we are given the average daily sales of each of the product, which is given by the product ID for a given period, right? And this period is denoted by the period start and the period end date, right? And these period start and period end dates are inclusive, inside of the period itself, right? Now what we need to do is, so if you can also read the description of this particular table, basically it says the same thing. What we need to do is we need to write a solution to report the total sales amount of each item for each year with corresponding product name, product ID, report year, and total amount. And we need to return the result table ordered by product ID and report year, right? So what it means is that for each of the year, for each of the product, I need to calculate the total sales amount, right? So for example, if I take the example of product ID 2, so if I consider the year 2018, right? So from this period start and period end dates, I can decipher that there are just 31 days for product ID 2 in 2018, right? When this particular product ID was sold, right? That is the entire month of December. It starts from 1st of December 2018 and goes up till 1st of January 2020. So effectively in 2018 report year, I just get 31 days, right? And since I'm saying that the daily sales value for each of the day basically in this particular reporting period for product ID 2 is 10, I can just multiply 31, that is the number of days, into uh, 10, right? And that way I will get 310 for entire reporting year 2018 for product ID 2, right? And that's what you see over here in the output for product ID 2 for year 2018, I get 310. And likewise, I can calculate for 2019 and 2020 also. For 2019, if you see the entire 2019 year is included in this particular report range, period range. And that's why I will do 365 into 10, that will be 3650. And similarly for 2020, I just have one day, which is 1st of Jan 2020. And so I will just do 1 into 10, which is 10. So the total amount for 2020 for product ID 2 will be 10, right? So this is what we need to do for each of the product. First, we need to find the number of days for each of the year, right? And it is also given that the dates of the sales years are between 2018 to 2020 only, right? So for each of the year, for each of the product, I need to find the number of days, and then I simply need to multiply those number of days into the average daily sales value, right? To get the total amount. And then I can do a simple join. That is trivial. We can do a simple join on product ID with the product table and get the product name in the output, right? So now maybe you can just pause this video and try to think of a solution on your own and also maybe write a query for the same. And once you're done, you can just come back and check the solution here. Okay, so now to solve this particular question, now of course there can be multiple ways of approaching this problem. Uh, but one of the ways that we can do is that we can actually expand this entire sales period for each of the product ID, right? And what I mean by expanding this period range for each of the product ID is that for each of the product ID, I will have a different row for each of the individual date that is included in this sales period, right? So for example, if from 25th of Jan 2019 to 28th of Feb 2019, for product ID 1, there will be like in total 35 days, right? So then I will have 35 different rows for product ID 1, and for each of the date, that is for each of the row, I will map the average daily sales value as the total sales value for that particular date, right? Because that's essentially the meaning of this average daily sales value as well, right? It gives us the sales value for every day in this particular period range, right? So that's what I can do for every product ID over here. I will just expand this particular period range and have, one row each for each of the date that is included, in these period ranges. And then I will map the average daily sales as the total sales value for that particular day, right? That's what I will do as a first step. And then it's pretty simple, right? I will then just extract the year part from, that date that I have got in each of the row now for each of the product. And then I will just group by on the product ID and the year and do a sum of the total sales. And that will give me the total sales value for each report year for each of the product ID, right? So that's the simple approach that I'm going to do. We are going to make use of a recursive CTE over here, right? So recursive CT is something, it's a very powerful tool which can be used to actually generate a sequence of numbers or dates, right? And things like that. And if you're not very clear about the concepts around recursive CT, as in how it works and why do we use it and how we can use it, then there is a very detailed video that I actually created while I was solving another problem. I will just attach the link of that particular video in this particular video, and then you can just try to practice that particular problem also. And in that way, you will be able to like understand recursive CT in depth, right? Because I took a lot of time actually to explain recursive CTs in that particular video. So it will really make your concepts very clear around recursive CT, and it's a, as I said, very powerful tool which can be used in multiple problems, right? So that's it. And now maybe you can, maybe we can just jump to the ID and write a solution that we just discussed. All right, so now let's implement the solution that we discussed, right? So before even starting to write the solution, maybe what we can do is we can select from the sales table just to have a look at the data, right? Like this. And let me just expand it, right? So this is our base data, right? And these are the period ranges that I need to expand, right? So basically when I say expand, what we need to do is for every product ID, we need to create a sequence of dates from my period start date till my period end date for every product, right? So that's what we need to do when we say expand these period ranges, right? And since now we need to create a sequence of dates from a particular start date till a particular end date, what we can do is we can make use of a recursive CT as we discussed, right? So what I'll do is I'll maybe create a CT over here, right? I can name it as maybe CT underscore explode, right? And then what I will do is inside of this select star from sales table, this I will make as my anchor member, that is my base query, and then I will union it with my recursive member, right? So as we know in a recursive CT, we have an anchor member, right? And this anchor member is like a base query, which is responsible of initially populating the CT underscore explode or the recursive CT, whichever recursive CT we are creating. So this anchor member is actually responsible of initializing the data inside of a recursive CT, right? And then we have a recursive member which keeps calling, this particular CT itself, like the uh, parent CT. It just keeps calling, it just keeps selecting on top of that parent CT, and that's how the recursion is achieved, right? So I will keep selecting from this CT underscore explode, right? And I will do some kind of operation over here, right? So over here, the operation that we need to do is that we need to every time in every recursion, keep adding 1 day to my previous period start date, right? So whatever period start is originally available over here in my base data, in the first recursion, I will just add 1 day to the to that period start date, right? And that will be my new period start date, which I will union with the existing, the old data, right? And that way I will just keep unioning every time I'm adding one to my last period start date, and I will keep getting sequence of dates, right? So that's how we like achieve this generation of sequence of numbers or dates by using a recursive CT, right? That's how it works. So over here, what I will do is I will just use the data add function to add 1 day to my period start date, right? Like this. And maybe I can call this as period start date itself, right? And other columns I will just select as is. So I have to select the product ID over here. I have to select it in the same order as it appears in the original data because I'm unioning it with that, right? So first is the product ID and then the period start, which I just updated by adding 1 to the original period start. And then I will select the period end as is. I don't have to make any change, right? And then I will select the average daily sales, right? So this way I will just keep selecting by adding 1 date to my previously added period start, right? In the CT underscore explode. And I will keep doing this till my period start is lesser than period end, right? So that's how I will be generating a sequence of consecutive dates starting from my period start till my period end, right? I hope this is pretty clear. Now, this is like the complete logic what we have to write in the recursive CT. Maybe what we can do is we can select from this particular recursive CT just to see if we are getting the right results or not, right? Okay, so we also need to do one more thing over here. So in most of the query engines, including the MS SQL Server, there is a default limit set on the maximum recursion, right? And over here in the MS SQL Server, it is 100, right? So the moment the recursion depth reaches 100, you will see this particular error. The statement will get terminated, right? So to avoid this, what we can do is we can either increase this recursion limit, right? Or we can just completely disable this, right? So to disable this, it's pretty straightforward. We can use an option with our query. We can say max recursion to 0, right? That's how we set the max recursion to 0. And once you set it to 0, this limit on the recursion depth will be completely disabled, right? Now, if I run this, I will get the results, right? And also, like, just to visualize the results properly, let me order by product ID like this, right? So if you see over here, now we are getting the expanded view of our entire period range, right? So for product ID 1, if you see, the first start is, of course, 25th of Jan 2019, the second date 26th of Jan 2019, then 27, 28, and I will keep getting all the dates in sequence till my period end, right? So if you see over here, I get the last date as 28th of Feb 2019, which essentially is my period end, right? So I was able to generate sequence of all the dates between this particular period range, right? That I initially had in my sales data, right? So I have been able to successfully expand the entire period range for each of the product individually, right? Now what I need to do is I just need to extract the year part from this period start date and uh, then just group by product ID and that year column and take the sum of the average daily sales to get the total sales amount for every year and every product, right? That's what we need to do. So now let me do one thing. Let me just write that query over here. I'll just remove this order by for now, right? Let me remove this. Now what I'll do is I'll group by product ID and then I will take the year part from my period start, right? And this I will also select now over here, right? And I can alias this as report year maybe, right? Like this. And now I have to take the sum of the average daily sales, right? And this I can call as my total amount, like this, right? Now if I run this for every product and every report year, I will get the total amount, right? That's what I wanted, but I just now need to add the product name over here in my final output. And for that, I just need to do an inner join with the product table on product ID. So let me just capture this particular result set also in a CT. I can call it as maybe CT temp results like this. And I will just select on top of it. I will say select from CTE temp results A inner join product B on A dot product ID equal to B dot product ID, right? And in the select clause, I will just select A dot product ID comma B dot product name to get the product name from the product table. And then I will get the A dot report year and also the A dot total amount, right? That's all what I need. If I run this, now I will get year-wise total amount for each of the product ID, right? And also, like as mentioned in the problem statement, we just need to return the output ordered by product ID and report year, right? So I will do just that, product ID, comma, report year, right? Now if I run this will give me the exactly same output what we saw in the explanation video, right? So this is it. This is the solution entirely. And again, like just repeating one more time, if you still have doubts in this recursive CT, because that is the core of this particular solution, right? How to actually generate a sequence of dates from a given date till a given date. So we have used recursive CT for that. If you still have doubts around recursive CT, I know it's a little confusing topic if you haven't worked with them before, you can really go back and see that video that I've linked with this particular video, and you will get all your doubts cleared around recursive CTs, right? And recursive CTs, believe me, you are a very powerful tool, and that really makes you stand out from the rest of the people, right? If you know recursive CT and somebody else who is very good in SQL otherwise, but is not really clear about recursive CT, there are many things that you can actually do which they cannot do, right? So enough of saying. Let's move on from here, and I will see you in the next video.